Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about a way of harmonizing an ascending scale, but not an ascending scale in the top voice of a texture, but in the bottom voice. It's actually much easier to harmonize a scale when it's in the top voice, really. Okay, sort of thing lots of people kind of do as a matter of course. Actually, when you harmonize the scale that's in the bass, slightly more awkward to deliver. And if I put the scale in the bass, the most tempting thing to do is just say, yeah, fine, chord 1, chord 2, chord 3, chord 4, chord 5, chord 6, chord 7, chord 1. C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, C. Well, it could work, but you're going to end up with all these parallels, fifths and octaves, which is not going to make it really sound as if you've got independent parts moving over that scale line of the bass. It may well work in a particular piece and a particular style that kind of suits you really well. That's absolutely fine. If you're kind of wanting to get away from that, or you're writing in a style in which we're encouraged not to write those kind of parallels or consecutives as they're known, well, how do we kind of get round those corners? Well, here's a little technique that I'm going to show you in this video, which is simply this. We take the bass line, okay, there's the ascending scale, it's C major in this case. One of the upper parts just runs exactly the same thing, so we've got like a parallel scale thing running here. It's in the same key, C major, but it's running E to E. So the bass is running C to C, this upper part is running E to E, but using the accidentals that belong to C major. In other words, no sharps, no flats. That gives you quite a nice starting point. And whenever you kind of add something in thirds or sixths, it tends to work well because it will always harmonize with the bass kind of quite nicely. So it's not a bad starting point. Then you can say, okay, well, if I've got these two notes, well, I've got two notes of a chord. I've got C and E. Well, C and E are the root and the third of a chord 1, a C major chord, C, E, G. Or they're the third and the fifth of an A minor chord, a chord 6. Well, if we're sort of trying to harmonize a scale to make it feel as if it really is in C major, we're probably going to go with the C major chord to kick off rather than the A minor chord. Well, that's perfectly possible thing to do. So kind of starting here with a chord 1. But what I'm suggesting here is that actually you might think, well, when I get to this point, I'm just using this as a root and a third and adding the fifth. So really that is a chord 2, the very thing we were saying we shouldn't do if we want to avoid these kind of parallels. So what am I up to now? All will be revealed. Okay, when I come on to this next thing, I'm thinking, well, E and G are the root and the third of a chord 3, an E minor chord. So there it goes. And so we go on, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 to finish. So you might think, oh, well, this isn't going to work because you're going to have all those things you told us to try and avoid. Now, this is where this gets a little bit clever, because what we're doing in the upper voice in this particular case is we're shifting the upper voice slightly out of sync with the lower two parts. So can you see what I'm doing here? I start with this chord 1, this C major chord, and this G is a fifth above the bass note. But what I'm trying to do are these 5/6 alternations. So this is a fifth above the bass. This is a 6 above the bass. It becomes a fifth above the bass, moves up to 6. Becomes a fifth, goes up to 6. Becomes a fifth, goes up to 6. We just carry on doing all of this stuff. So this upper part becomes a sort of 5/6, 5/6, 5/6, 5/6, 5/6, just doing this for the sake of completion, 5/6, 5/6, as intervals above the bass. You see what I mean? I've got C in the bass, G is a fifth above it, going to A that's a sixth above it. So I can avoid having a load of fifths just by kind of running them out of sync with each other. And really the reason I get away with that is because moving from 5 to 6 changes the chord to the alternative that we talked about. So let's just be clear about this. At the beginning we said, well, we started with C and E, and we said, well, that's the root and the third of a chord 1, but we also said it's the third and the fifth of a chord 6. Now when that top part starts on the G, well, the G, this G at the top, is completing that chord 1. When it moves to A, well, what's actually sounding now on the second beat of that bar is a chord 6. And it's a chord 6 in first inversion, or an A minor / C chord. So this is now a 6B, or you might know it as a 6/6. We then move on and do the same thing again. So this becomes a 7B. And then we go on to this point, and this becomes a 1B, or a 2B, and then a 3B. And then we go on there to a 4B and a 5B. You might know the first inversions as Bs, or you might know them as 6, same thing. Aha, now you see what's happening. By going 5/6, 5/6 sort of outer kilter with the lower two parts, it makes it slightly more interesting than just going chord, 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 chord. So there's a bit of rhythmic interplay, but it also means we can alternate these chords. So we're going from a root position to a first inversion, to the next root position, to the next first inversion, and so on. And it gets us out of all these parallel problems. So we end up with this. Which is much better than doing all this parallel stuff. I mean, write that if you want to, and it might well work in a particular piece you're working on, but this gets you out of all the problems. And it also gives you a sequence. We've got this rising sequence of repeated musical ideas playing out. You can do all sorts of things to elaborate that, so you don't just have to have these plain 2-beat notes in the lower parts. If you want to elaborate something there, you know, you could do something like that. I mean, lots of things you can do with it. You can play around with that, but this gives you the kind of essential package. Now, of course, you can do exactly the same thing with the upper parts reversed. So you see the upper part is now what was the middle part, and the middle part is now what was the upper part. I've just shifted it down an octave. So in this version, it plays out like this. And you can decorate that. Just one very simple way in which you can decorate it. But it gives you an essential way to work that pulls you away from all these problems that you sometimes have harmonizing and a scale in the bass line by using these alternations, 5/6, 5/6, 5/6. And it gives you a more interesting chord pattern. And also you've got 2-beat notes in the bass in this example, but the chords moving every single beat. So there's quite a lot of chord movement as well as a bit of rhythmic movement in between, which just kind of energizes the whole bass line. So I hope that's a useful little tip in one way of harmonizing an ascending scale in the bass. If you've enjoyed this video, let me invite you to the Music Matters website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. When you get on there, you can click on courses, you can click on maestros, lots of other things to find out about as well. If you click on maestros, this might intrigue you because it's our global musical community. And it's fantastic how people around the world are connecting. Lots of people who feel they're on a kind of lonely musical journey, and Maestros is a way of connecting. Nothing to do with ability levels, they're just levels of engagement. If you come on at level 1, you have exciting things like emojis, you get early access to videos, things like that. So that's quite a fun thing to do, and it's a way of kind of engaging with us and supporting us a bit, which helps us to keep producing all these videos. If you want to go a step further, you can sign up for level 2. You automatically have all the level 1 benefits as well, but level 2 gives you extra perks, including access to a monthly live stream where I kind of produce an hour of pretty solid teaching, hopefully, and the topics that we cover are often requested by members. So if you've got something you think, I'm really burning to know about that, and wouldn't it be great if someone could teach me that for an hour, come on to level 2 Maestros, request the topic, and we'll do our very best to deliver it. There's a live chat running, so people interact with each other, we share news and views, and people can ask questions, so you can kind of interrogate me during the course of the delivery of the topic under consideration for that particular thing. But there's a live stream every single month. If you can't get there in person, don't worry, they're all recorded, so you can access them at a time that suits you. If you want to go a step further, engage with us at level 3. All the benefits of level 1 and level 2 are yours. The additional benefits for level 3 include discounts on all of our courses and an additional live stream every month, much more individually tailored. You can hand in one of your compositions, a harmony exercise, a recorded performance that you've done, and you can receive one-to-one feedback from me. I'll try to give you really balanced evaluation, what's working well, what's good about it, hints and tips for what you might just think about developing. And we share all this in the group. People are incredibly supportive of each other. Everybody learns from everybody else in the group, and it's amazing to see how many of our composers in particular have really progressed as they've stuck with us from month to month. So it's a very exciting community to be a part of. You can meet with other people making the same kind of journey as you might be making, maybe experiencing the same successes and the same frustrations, and it leads to great friendships being formed. So it's a wonderful privilege to be part of that. Anyway, check it out by clicking Maestros on the homepage, www.mmcourses.co.uk.